Joining us now, former governor of Maryland, Republican, Bob Ehrlich. Governor, great to have you.
Good morning, pal. How are you?
Noted author of many books. You know, Governor, if you lived in Virginia, your electric rates would be 33% less.
Well,
I bet you didn't know that.
I understand, but I also am a fan of the Virginia Cavaliers style of play. I grew up watching Pete Carrill's teams at Princeton. I love backdoors, I love threes, I love defense, and what's boring also translates into W's, and don't you forget it.
Well, you know what? Well, I got to sit there and watch it. I used to coach high school basketball. I used to beat teams like that all the time. I stand there and watch them throw 19 passes. I just want to shoot the ball and go.
I mean, I love watching them play defense.
Yeah, they do play good defense, but
it's fun to watch.
But you know what?
Anyway,
Defense doesn't win basketball games. You got to score points, Governor. Points. It's about points.
True.
What do you think of the Mueller investigation?
To me, it was a big yawner. It's funny because this is the second interview I've given over the last 2 days, and I used the same term yesterday. It was expected. Anybody somewhat detached, watching how this unfolded, watching the lack of real news, the lack of any leads over the past 3 years, watching how the thing was put together, who they talked to, just watching the daily news cycle, you had to expect this. It was a bunch of nothing from the beginning. It was a counterintelligence investigation. We know how it started. And so for me, I'm happy for the president. I'm happy for the country. I'm sad for so many people that went through such angst and legal bills. But for me, this was expected. And quite frankly, that also extends to most of the people I know, even some Democrats who are out there doing their thing, and we just heard the montage, which is pretty impressive. But anybody that's really surprised about this, I really have to worry about.
Governor, let me ask you something. What you just said, Governor Ehrlich, former Republican governor of Maryland, what you said is spot on, right? Absolutely spot on. Based on your analysis, your experience, there was really never any evidence here that you could connect any dots. Yet up until Friday, the legacy fake news media, so-called serious columnists and reporters analysts were telling you, I mean, former CIA Chief Brennan was telling us there was something there. Mark Warner telling us a week ago Sunday there was something there. He had evidence that there was definitely collusion. Adam Schiff. I mean, these people were doing this up until Friday.
But it was all. What's the old talk's cheap? You know what walks and all that stuff. The old cliche, the old sports cliches. This was all talk. There was never anything. What was that great old commercial, the Wendy's commercial? Where's the beef? Remember that great one? There was never beef. There was never a beef patty. There was never a foundation here. There was nothing. There was just nothing. There were aspirational comments from people who do not like Donald Trump, who have not liked Donald Trump from day one. Some Republicans, many Democrats. And as you've seen, the rhetoric from those folks hasn't changed. Well, I guess it's changed a little bit direction, but not temperature over the past 48 hours. It's now obstruction. Even though we now with Attorney General Barr and Rod Rosenstein, what they've decided, what they've held as well concerning obstruction, that's what it's going to be now. No collusion, but it was obstruction. And it's going to be obstruction for the next 2 years. And it's going to be the thousands of subpoenas and more legal bills and more angst and more talking heads on MSNBC and CNN talking about obstruction. And that's also going to lead to nothing, but it gives them something to do.
Well, it's unbelievable. I'm going to play a clip here. We're with Governor Bob Ehrlich, former Republican governor of Maryland, noted author of many books. We're going to get into that in a minute. Let's go, Kiara, to cut 7. I want to get the governor's reaction to this. This is former CIA director. I mean, think about this, Governor, right? You were governor of a major state. This is a former Central Intelligence Agency director, not like a lower level person that goes to Langley. This is the director. On the Mueller report, he said, I don't know if I received bad information, but I think I suspected that there's more. He's still in denial. This is unbelievable. Here, I got to get your reaction. Cut 7, Brennan.
Well, I don't know if I received bad information, but I think I suspected that there was more than there actually was. And I am relieved that it's been determined that there was not a criminal conspiracy with the Russian government over our election. I think that is good news for the country. And so I still point to things that were done publicly or efforts to try to have conversations with the Russians that were inappropriate. But I'm not all that surprised that the high bar of criminal conspiracy was not met. I am surprised at that second part of obstruction of justice in terms of how it came out. I don't know whether or not Bob Mueller wanted the Attorney General to pronounce on that issue, or whether or not Bob Mueller felt that it would be best for Congress and American people to determine whether the weight of the information indicates that Donald Trump did try to obstruct justice. So there are some surprises there, and that's why I think getting to the full Mueller report is the best way to get some of these, if not all of these questions answered.
What is he talking about?
Well, you just heard what he said. People need to really listen to words people use. He went from obstruction from conspiracy to obstruction to collusion to inappropriate in one statement. I hadn't heard that statement before, but I just counted different standards he utilized in that 30-second clip. So now the test is inappropriate, which, by the way, haven't proved that either, but certainly not illegal. So they keep moving the bar. It's a kid's game. You keep moving the bar, and again, it's politics. People need to understand this. 40% of the country is convinced that MSNBC was right. They're convinced that Mueller that Mueller's in on it. Whatever they're convinced of, they're a hate Trump all the time, every day until the next 2 years is done. A group, and nothing is going to disabuse them. 40% of the country loves the president, and we all know that 40% very well. And so, what did this mean? Bottom line, which I think is your real question, who did this impact? And it really impacted 20% of the folks who were actually standing off here and read the newspapers and listen to the radio, and were a little confused. No surprise there. And today wake up with the idea, you know what, this is all a bunch of big nothing burger.
Governor,
it was a nothing burger.
Is this going to affect the Democrats politically, or do you think it'll all blow over by 2020?
I think it'll, I think marginal, as I just described, I think it'll be marginal. I think it'll be, however, potentially relevant to the extent that in close elections, and 2020 is going to be a close election, the respective bases are solid. As I said, 40, 42, 44% each way, love Trump, hate Trump. But with respect to that next 15, 20% of voters out there, the true independents, the leaners, the suburban women, this could have an impact. So to that extent, yes.
Yeah, I think it will too. I think it's going to have an impact in Virginia. We have state and state Senate and House of Delegates elections coming up in Virginia in November, and of course for the Democrats here in the state legislature made tremendous gains in 2017, off the charts, almost took over the House, and
I followed it,
yeah. So, but I think this has got to hurt them, especially the other nonsense that's gone on here in Virginia.
If you've been out there on a limb with literally nothing to back up your allegations, you've been doing the whole deal with the alphabet soup, cable networks, and engaging in conspiracy theories and outrageous allegations. It should hurt you. It should hurt you.
Well, look, one of my issues is with my senator here in Virginia, senior senator and ranking member of the Intel Committee, Mark Warner, who has gone on TV time after time after time after time, as you know, Governor Ehrlich, gone on the Sunday talk shows and saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's more questions than answers. I've got evidence. He went to London to try to meet with the fake dossier guy in a secret meeting. And, Mark Warner either bad intel or convinced himself or whatever. And up to the final week, he was still saying that there was collusion. There was evidence up to the final 2 weeks. And now, I've heard crickets from him. I can't get him on my show.
And I've known, listen, Mark and I got along very well as
he's a good guy.
In fact, we attended Maryland UVA games together. We cooperated as governors. We're personal friends. I watched for most of. I understand the smoke comments, but with regard to what happens now, obviously, my opinion is, he's going to be asked directly. He needs to do something very direct to you, to the press, and to the voters, and give his opinion as to what he just read and what just happened. And I suspect that will happen. Certainly, the voters are due and knowing in that regard. I don't think Mark was one of the major offenders, quite frankly, compared to so many other folks out there on the horizon. Again, I think the voters the people need to understand what happened here, why it happened, and I do think we need to spend a minute or two again now on why it happened. This was a counterintelligence investigation. We know there were some real shenanigans occurring in the Department of Justice and the FBI. We know some of the bad players here, and I think the people are also owed that explanation. And I'm not calling for necessarily, as Lindsey Graham has, another special counsel, enough special counsels. My God, I'm not sure I could take it.
Right.
But I do think there needs to be some investigation into the genesis of how this all came about. It's not just good enough to say we hate Donald Trump and we had to have an answer as to why Hillary Clinton lost. I'll tell you why Hillary Clinton lost. She didn't go to the Midwest, to a handful of industrial states. She pretended the blue wall was solid, and it wasn't. That's why she lost.
Right.
Period.
Right. Had nothing to do with Russia.
Had nothing to do with Russian or anything else. She didn't listen to her husband, who said, you better get to those working class folks who voted for Barack Obama twice, by the way, but are not crazy about you, and they're really responding to this message from this guy, Donald Trump. And she said, no, my analytics people tell me I'm good.
That's right.
So I'm going to go to wherever we're going to expand the map 2 weeks before the election. We're going to expand the map. Remember that one?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
2 weeks before the election.
You better be careful expanding the map when your base is so solid.
Yeah, she went to Atlanta, and where else did she go? Charlotte.
To the South. She went to the South and West. She went to red-leaning states, and boom. And guess what happened? We saw what happened. So, look, there could be some mini realignments happening in American politics now. The solid South may not be so much for Republicans, with Georgia and North Carolina now more marginal. And that great blue wall may not be so solid for Democrats going forward with the right Republican messenger.
Well, there is a realignment. Hey, you got to buy Bob's new book that came out 2018. Bet you didn't see that one coming, by Governor Bob Ehrlich. Check that out. It's a good one. Check that out. I did have a chance to read that. Bet you didn't see that coming, by former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich. Governor, I've only got a couple more minutes, but I want to get to the Democratic Party now and all these candidates running for president. What do you see? Who do you have as the favorite? I've already predicted Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee, so I've already tipped my hand. Who do you think is going to be the nominee, and why?
Michael Bloomberg was the person I thought would be the most competitive and potential real threat to the president.
Agreed.
Because one, self-funder; two, someone who had won a big race; three, who had governed generally as a moderate.
Right.
Less a center, but generally as a moderate. Someone who's very bright and all that. When he got out, I breathed a sigh of relief. I just can't believe the Democratic Party is going to nominate a progressive for president. For the very reason we've discussed during this interview, we've discussed in the past when I've talked to you. I don't think they want to lose again. But to the extent they do nominate a progressive, regardless of who it is, including Senator Sanders, I think they'll lose. I think America is not there. America is generally a slightly right-of-center country. And to elect someone with those ideas, that platform, that sort of victim mentality is very difficult for me to believe. I believe if a liberal could survive, which I don't think potentially is possible, by the way, if a traditional liberal could survive, again, a Joe Biden, for example, but would they allow Joe Biden to run as a traditional liberal, or would they force him left as they did Hillary Clinton? And so, again, I think right now I'm a realist. I'm generally optimistic about the president's chances. I think that when you compare, I should say, the president's record of performance and success, his Reagan-esque record, quite frankly, on the stuff that counts, to what the progressives are selling our country. Again, I think just a detached view would make you favor the president.
Well, I think certainly now with this Mueller thing behind him, he's no question a favorite. But, I think Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee because I don't see. I think
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. It's just hard.
It's just hard to see it.
Step.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you understand why?
Yeah, but you just look at the math. I mean, he's going to win or come in second in Iowa. He beat her. Remember, Bernie Sanders beat Clinton in Iowa the last time, right? He got cheated out of Iowa on a series of on a series of 12 coin flips. I mean, that thing was completely rigged in Iowa. And then he went to New Hampshire and he crushed her.
Yeah.
So he's going to win New Hampshire again. He's going to beat Warren in New Hampshire. That's the end of her campaign's gone. And then Kamala Harris or somebody, Cory Booker, you name, Beto, somebody.
Here's my issue. And
right.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I get it. You and I both know, for instance, a couple dozen fairly moderate Democrats were elected to the House last cycle.
Right.
We know that still in this party there are Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey types, traditional liberals, not progressives.
Right.
For instance, they believe in free speech
right.
and national defense.
Right.
Let alone John Kennedy Democrats and Harry Truman Democrats. So those Democrats are still out there in the party. They're silent now. They've been run over by the progressive wing of the party and what the press is doing to that progressive wing and promoting it. But are they going to stand by and watch this occur? I think that's the real story. It's sort of the converse of our party last time with the establishment Republicans. Are you going to allow Donald Trump to run this party and take over this party and Trumpism and the Trumpers and all that stuff? It's sort of the converse. So it's the flip side here. It's traditional moderates, the remaining conservative Democrats, and really traditional liberals allow this sort of uber progressivism, which turns a lot of people off. Are they going to allow that agenda to represent the Democratic Party in 2020 against President Trump?
Yes.
If they do,
yes.
By the way, well, you're welcome to it. It makes me happy. It makes you happy.
Yep.
But is that going to happen? I don't know. Is Mark Warner going to be happy about that? I tend to doubt it.
Well, look, the next time you talk to Governor Warner, I voted for him. I endorsed him in 2014 over Ed Gillespie, who I thought ran a totally empty suit campaign and didn't stand for anything. And I endorsed Warner because I thought it would be really important for Virginia to have a senior senator that was a moderate that I knew would be ranking intel chairman. And so I was very, very disappointed with the way he handled this Mueller investigation up until the end. And he had an out, Governor. The out was when Richard Burr, his chairman,
they get along very well.
Richard Burr, great guy. I mean, these are just...
He's a good friend.
I'm just looking for statesmen. Burr's a statesman. And every statement he made with Warner, they stood there together. And I'm like, wow,
you're right.
This is the way.
It was the old days.
It was the old days. And
they were dinosaurs. It was beautiful to watch.
Thank you. It was beauty. They stood together. Everything they said was together. And I said, okay, this is a serious investigation. And finally, Richard Burr said, I've had enough. 2 years, 500 witnesses, thousands of hours of testimony. There's no collusion. There's nothing there. I'm done. And Warner broke with him and said, no, I've got evidence. Well, what evidence do you have that he doesn't have? You're on the same committee.
Let's go real quick. 19 attorneys, 40 FBI agents, 500 search warrants, 500 plus witness interviews, over $22 million, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is pretty thorough. And your issue is, what is Mark going to say? And I think we need to sit back and wait for Mark to say something here.
I think he owes his followers, and I think he owes the people that...
I think it's part of the job.
Yeah, you got to make a statement, and I don't want a Jerry Connolly statement. Okay, it was a setup by Barr. Come on, that's just nonsense. Yeah, I want a real Mark Warner sober statement.
Nonsense from Mark, correct?
Yeah, I don't want to see any nonsense. Okay, Governor, great to have you on. Hey, buy the governor's book, man. It is you got to buy his book. Bet you didn't.
The Trump phenomenon.
Bet you didn't see that one coming by former People's of Republic Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich. Still my hero.
Love you, pal. Take care.
All right, Bob Ehrlich.